Hey, greetings, performance reviews. Now, generally I do reviews of a different sort, but today we're going to be doing a review on the 2022 Nissan Frontier, which is the new redesign for 2022. This is the Pro 4X model, which came fully loaded. Now, as some of you who are my fans already know, I have a background in underground amateur rally racing, and I competed in drifting many years ago. So you might say I'm a bit of a car enthusiast. This is going to be a very thorough review. We're going to go inside the cabin, tell you what that's like to live with after hundreds of miles. We're going to tell you what a real-world driving experience is on and off the highway. We're going to go off-roading in the backwoods of Colorado. We're going to talk about everything else I've test drove in the segment, and I have test drove everything and what made me buy this over the competition. We're going to go through what to order, what not to order, what the dealer experience is like, as has changed a lot in the past year. So stay tuned. Let's get into it. This high-revving V6 really shines when you compare it to the competition. It has 310 horsepower. It doesn't have class-leading torque numbers or towing numbers, but it is more than adequate and quite peppy for a truck. The 9-speed automatic is by far the best transmission of anything in this class that I drove. As far as the interior goes, everything's soft, nice, nothing rattles. It's really a comfortable place to be. It's well thought out. You have a separate physical control for your HVAC system. Everything makes sense. You can activate it while you're driving really without looking at it. The heated seats work well. They will burn your ass if it's not winter. Right next to the heated seat for the driver is the heated steering wheel, which is a nice feature as well. The 4-low to 4-high works instantly when you're moving, so you don't have to wait for it like the Toyota. Really, my only gripe with this interior is the location of the diff lock and your hill descent control and your traction control. They were down on the floor. I rearranged the buttons. Thankfully, they're modular. Subscribe to our vlog channel to see a tutorial on how to do that. The other thing I'd like to point out is it just has a regular shifter with a very simple pattern that's just straightforward, and then you move it to the side for manual shifting. None of that knob nonsense like Ford and Dodge are using. One of the common complaints I see is that it's outdated. I really think it's faster than the system in our Audi, and I feel like it's more than adequate. Everything is fast on the touchscreen to respond. It's really one of the better systems I've used. Excuse me, hunting and pecking. I'm going to edit some of these clips so I'm not doxing myself with the GPS location of my house. I am really satisfied with this infotainment system. Apple and Android CarPlay were straightforward. They're wired. They're not wireless, unfortunately. You can use just about everything with Android Auto. Oddly enough, you can't use your music settings, your actual Google Music app on your phone, so that's a little bit weird, but you can use VLC in place of that. I could definitely see how this would be a distraction when you're driving, being able to use Waze and all this interactive stuff. It just seems kind of silly. But I understand the majority of you are going to want this. The screen is well laid out. The home screen is simple. You can also adjust the brightness to auto. There's an instant button for going between daytime and nighttime. You can also turn the display off if you find it a distraction. I found it quite a bit of a distraction on a mountain road, so it's nice you can just turn it off. Oddly enough, the steering wheel doesn't telescope, but it does tilt. I did find that the secondary display was far more useful. The off-road display was extremely useful for knowing where you are in terms of angles and lines for your front tire. Going through the modes is very simple. My only real criticism is that the steering wheel volume button is in a wacky location. It's just easier to use the knob. But again, having all your gauges right there, they're really simple to go through. Another note is if you turn the traction control stuff off, all that driver's assistant bullshit turns off. Now, the driver's assistant just beeps. It does not automatically brake in the forward direction. It will automatically brake in the rear direction, so keep that in mind. It's not nearly as invasive as, say, Subaru's EyeSight system. I find it in bad taste that you can't order the higher-end sound system without having this stuff.
Now, I know this isn't going to be a huge deal for most people, but the fact that they moved the
emergency brake,
the center console to down here, is a big drawback for me. I am glad it's manual, not electric, but I prefer it in the center console so I can use it as a turning brake. This eliminates that feature. Now, something that was of contention was the wireless charger. Depends on where your phone's at. If it's moved wrong, it's just going to turn off. So you have to make sure it's in the right spot for it to work. Now, there's minimum use of this black plastic through the cabin, and it is sparkly, so it kind of looks like there's dust on it from the factory. The center console is pretty large. You can put a lot of stuff in it. It doesn't lock, though. It does have a pass-through for a cable, which is well thought out, I guess. The power seats. They do move, they are adjustable up, down, but they're only on the driver's side. I'm really disappointed in that. I feel those should be on the passenger side. There's also no memory control on these, which I find a bit odd in 2022.
I want to mention that the seats were the most comfortable of anything in this class that we sat in, so that goes a long way.
But it's easy to hit that. There's also an SOS button, which I've accidentally hit and had nothing happen.
There's additional storage under the passenger side back seat. The driver's side seat is taken up with a subwoofer. I'm 6'3", and with the front seat all the way back, I can sit behind myself relatively easily. All the door pockets are well thought out with room for a large water bottle. I will say the audio system leaves some to be desired. As far as the truck bed goes, that soft drop tailgate is nice. The in-bed lighting is also very nice along with the rail. I'm not sure the rail's really worth it with the tie-downs because there are already steel tie-downs underneath those adjustable aluminum ones, but for a 5-foot bed it does well. Mine did come with a spray-in liner from Nissan, which is a nice touch. I see some payload capacity criticism, but really, what are you going to put in a 5-foot bed? There is a power inverter, but it's only 450 watts, so keep that in mind. It would be nice to see at least 1,000 watts so it could run all the tools. Unfortunately, that's not enough to run a modern vacuum cleaner. Let's hop in the driver's seat and what this thing's like to drive on a daily basis on road, which is the majority of what you're going to be driving this thing. This thing handles very well for a small pickup truck. It's not a sports car, but it handles much better than the other things in the class. The independent front suspension turns well under braking, turns well under acceleration. The traction control isn't too invasive, though it does cut power rather than braking, which is an interesting feature. I drive it most of the time. First thing I do is turn the traction control off on any vehicle. That's just my preference. The whole thing just really maneuvers better than you would expect it to for a truck. It's much more car-like than the competition. So I really enjoy driving, and that's part of what sold us on the experience. There's not a lot of wind noise. It's fairly aerodynamic for a truck, believe it or not. The double pane glass also makes a huge difference when somebody pulls up to you in traffic, blaring music, things like that. So it's really compliant. Again, I'm showing you this on a mountain road to give you an idea how the thing handles. There's also not too much body roll, but it is felt. If I was going to change something about the suspension, I really wouldn't. I think those Bilstein shocks really do a great job. And if you get a Pro 4X model, you'll notice the difference between the handling of that versus the SV. Again, those Bilstein struts really, they're just tuned perfect. If you're doing a lot of dirt roads, they're going to just glide over the dirt road. They're really tuned for kind of more of a desert running, kind of high speed off-road, light off-road than rock crawling. So keep that in mind. And that translates to better on-road performance. The lighting at night is wonderful. The lights will automatically switch between high and low beams. The fog lamps are useful. Everything is nice. It's really well lit, even compared to our Audi. I would say these lights are a step above that. If you're going off-road, again, you might want better lights, but for driving just normal highway in and out of the city, it's great. You also have enough power to pass somebody if you need. Your 0 to 60 time isn't the greatest, but your like 50 to 90 time is great, if that makes sense to you. Since you have that torque from that NA V6 that revs very high, it just goes. The ZF transmission is extremely compliant. I find it downshifting when I want it to downshift. It doesn't over upshift, which is a big thing for me, which allows you to just take your foot off the gas and let the car engine brake. So I really like the way the automatic transmission programming is on this. It's a big step above the Toyota and some of the other ones that I've driven. I don't find myself needing to manually shift this nearly as much as I do other vehicles. Again, which is saying something. All right, part of my reason for buying this is we wanted a truck that we could work with during the work, and then on the weekends we could go to the Jeep trails in Colorado. And this is one of the few options that will do that. This thing is just wonderful off-road. It really met my expectations. I know it doesn't have a front sway bar disconnect or a front locker, but it's more than enough to get over 90% of the situations. As far as rock crawling and more extreme things go, I think the skid plates could be a little bit thicker, but at least they're there. They're on the fuel tank. I'm happy with what's there from Nissan. The truck stops, brakes, does all the things just fine. You'll need to definitely air down those tires. I know that seems like common knowledge, but you will need to do that off-road. I did, just for kicks and giggles, not do it for this trip, and it did very well. I did find it, again, bouncing up and down. It doesn't get high-centered easily, which is a great thing as well. Articulation in the front is great. In the rear, it's a little limited. But again, for most of what people are going to be doing, I think it's just fine. Now, as far as included off-road goodies, you do have a crawl control where it's like an off-road cruise control, where it will go at like 2 to 5 miles an hour and slowly crawl down as I'm doing right here. I found it too slow for most situations, so that's really more for extreme stuff or if you're new to off-roading. I found that the angle gauge got maxed out too much, but the ability to know where your wheels are looking up at the screen is really a valuable tool in terms of which angle your wheels are at. I really like the 360-degree camera when I was buying the truck. In practical use, it's great when you're parking, but when you're off-road, it's just not high enough resolution to really tell you where the truck is, so you're still going to need a spotter in half of the situations you would normally get out and walk. I'll also say that it shuts off at way too low to speed. It's like 6 to 9 miles an hour it will shut off. And when you're off-road, your speedometer isn't very accurate, so it would be helpful if they would up that to like 20 miles an hour or even 30. But I found it shutting off way too much. There's also no gizmo like the Jeep Gladiator has to clean the camera, so you actually have to clean it constantly when you're off-road as well for it to really be useful. I also want to say the hood's really high and blocks your view on a lot of things. Again, the Chevy Colorado, the Ford Ranger, they're all like this in this class now. The Toyota Taco. So that camera helps with that. But again, it's still not a replacement for a spotter, so do expect to have to get out and look more often than you think you would with the camera. But if you're just turning around or something, it's very useful. Now that I've shared my first 800 miles of experience with the truck, let's talk about how you get one of these and what you can expect to pay. Well, if you're old enough to remember when airlines didn't charge for luggage, car manufacturers are doing that too, and it's not just Mercedes and Porsche, it's everybody, Jeep, Nissan. So you do have to add some packages in there, which makes the MSRP quite deceiving. The real MSRP on this truck is going to start you around $40. I did find a few dealers in my area price gouging, but don't pay more than MSRP for this. Dealers are still willing to negotiate. Now, I don't recommend paying for the rock sliders, and I'll get to that in a bit. This is the part that's confusing. So if you're like me and you don't like having all the driver's aids, too bad. You have to buy those if you want the premium audio system, if you want those 360-degree cameras, if you want Bluetooth, all that stuff, Apple, Android CarPlay. Yeah, you're going to end up having all three of these packages combined. You can't just order one without the other, unfortunately, which, again, adds quite a bit to the cost of the truck, which is how my sticker price got to be $45 and some change, along with, practical things like a trailer hitch and things like that. Now, I said I didn't recommend the rock sliders. Here's why.
So what happened was I had pulled off the end of a trail to let somebody by in a side-by-side, and when I started from the pull-off, there was a rock I couldn't see, and it basically grabbed this thing, and it basically pulled all three of these up. Now if you look here, you notice the metal's not sharply broken. It's like cracked off like concrete, and that's an example. They use really, really poor metal for that. I'm not sure why, but that should be steel, that should not be aluminum. And if it was going to be aluminum, it would need to be a lot thicker.
So if you can, don't pay $500 for this. This is maybe $30, $40 worth of stuff at your local Walmart.
So this is what's in the $500 backpack. And we got rope, duct tape, and gloves. That just looks really bad. I'll let you use your imagination with that one.
Now, how did I come to the conclusion of buying this truck? I did try the TRD Pro. I've tried all Toyota options, both the 4th and the 3rd gen. I've tried multiple Gladiators, both diesel and gas. We took the Chevy Colorado for a test drive. We did take a couple Ford Rangers for a test drive, though those were used. So again, how did I come to the conclusion of buying the Frontier? Well, first off, availability. The Nissan I could get the soonest and get to work. So that was a big factor in this purchase, but not the only factor. The Toyota and the Ford were just basically unattainium right now. If I wanted a new one of those, it would be literally 6 to 12 months before I could get one. Again, I wanted something sooner than that. The Jeep was better. It was 3 to 6 months. The Jeep was also the most expensive. Realistically, a Jeep's between $60,000 and $70,000 if you order it. It also has the worst motor option. The seating is pretty bad in the front seat of the Jeep in terms of legroom. If you're a bigger guy, if you're a small guy, it's not really an issue. And then I think the Italians have really done a lot for Jeep, and whatever FCA is going to call themselves now, I think they've really done a lot. Again, they're not the Jeep of yesteryear. That's not an American product, but it still leaves some quality to be desired. It's not as bad as the Chevy Colorado, which when we sat in, as soon as my wife got in, she poked at the door sill and it literally came off. And the Chevy Colorado, there's only like 1 or 2 on the lots to choose from. Again, availability is basically not existing with that as well. The Ford Ranger was great in terms of the power. It had a lot of technology, though it felt very cheap inside. It drove good. The biggest problem, again, with the Ford Ranger is we really couldn't get it if we wanted to, but that probably would have been my second pick of them all. Now, the Toyota, that's really going to be the one that's going to hurt a lot of people. The Toyota's transmission is way too old. The powertrain is underpowered on this generation. The previous generation is better, just basically in every possible way. Again, I really couldn't get one if I wanted. There were several used that would have fit the bill, that would have been factory certified pre-owned. It had a really old interior, and for basically 38 to 40 some $1,000, the price of a new vehicle. There's really no justification of the price of the Toyota over the others. So with all that in mind, we ended up with the Frontier, which we can get new, fully loaded for basically either the price of a used Toyota or for less than a used Jeep Gladiator, and about the same price as like a new Ranger or a new Chevy Colorado. Besides the quality issues with the Chevy Colorado, the visibility was the worst. The hood goes up 2 feet in the air for no reason with the shortest windshield. Well, that explains how we got to the Nissan Frontier. I'm quite happy with it. We have almost 1,000 miles on it right now. Again, except for that rock slider, I really have nothing negative to say about the truck. If you like car reviews, or if you have anything to add about the options I talked about, please comment below, like, subscribe. Check out some of our other content that's not car related as well. If anything wasn't covered in this video, feel free to reach out and ask me, and have yourself a wonderful day.